Christopher Williams, Billboard Top 3000 Countdown. Yeah. Every chorus, every hook, you know by heart. Christopher Williams, Billboard Top 3000 Countdown. From number one to the ones that lit the charts. Christopher Williams, Billboard Top 3000 Countdown. Oh yeah. Christopher Williams, Billboard Top 3000 Countdown.
What do you think? I'm testing out new jingles for season 2, and I thought I'd put it in the in-between episode. That's a first example of it. I will have another one generated tomorrow. How is everybody doing? This is the Mailbag episode, bonus episode between season 1 and season 2. Thank you so much for your patience while I get set for the top 2,000 songs of all time. But I thought this would be a nice interlude in which you can ask me additional questions about myself, about this podcast, about the music industry in general. I got some good ones back, so let's get to them from the Facebook group. If you are not in the Facebook group, what is your problem? Come join us. Chris Billboard Top 3000 Countdown Podcast. Go find that. Request an invite, and I will approve it and get you in. We have 331 members as we speak. Enough of me plugging my show. Let's answer some questions, shall we? There weren't quite as many volunteers as the first Mailbag episode, but those that did asked them in multiples. So if you hear the same name over and over again, there's your reason. First question from Ann Keene, the award-winning Ann Keene. Yes, I was on stage with her when she performed her Lou Award-winning role as Maddie Faye in August Osage County a year ago. Hello, Ann. A dream collaboration, perhaps one living and one dead. Well, you didn't say music per se. The first thing that came to my mind was Eddie Izzard and George Carlin on stage together for 3 hours. Especially in this particular climate, I would love to hear what the two of them have to say. But that's not a musical collaboration. The first musical collaboration I came up with was Freddie Mercury and Angus Young. I have no idea what they would do together. I just think those two are the best musicians of my lifetime, and I just want to hear them jam for a couple of hours. As far as my favorite artist, Daryl Hall, he doesn't do enough collaboration with other folks, at least before he did his Live from Daryl's House show on the internet. But there's a lot of famous artists that I think could collaborate with him, like a Diana Ross, like getting him together with Van Halen's band, as it was rumored that he was once asked to join Van Halen after David Lee Roth had left. I think he left some points out on the court with other collaborations that he could have done. I would have also loved to see artists that passed away way too soon to have 80s hits and 90s hits like Janis Joplin or John Lennon or Sam Cooke from the 60s. Can you imagine him coming back as a 67-year-old and duetting with George Michael, or playing an 80s hit with Bruce Hornsby as the piano background? There's so many possibilities. And I don't really have one specific one, but those are a couple of the ones that I thought of. And great question. If you have some collaborations that you would like to see, post them on the Facebook group. I would love to have a thread going with people's favorite dream collaborations. The next question from Matt Geske. Hello, Matt. What is your one stranded on an island with one album choice? Well, it would have to be an anthology, wouldn't it? Because I want to get as many frickin' songs as I possibly can, like Billy Joel's, greatest hits, volumes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, or whatever. Daryl Hall's Be What You Want, Do As You Are. It's like a 6-album anthology. From a single album, to be honest, the one that I played with the most in the 80s was Bruce Hornsby and the Range Is the Way It Is. That one is solid from first song to last song, and I could listen to that one constantly, which I have through the years when I was still listening to full albums. So I would probably have to go with that one, Bruce Hornsby and the Range Is the Way It Is, as my stranded island. I'm hoping the stranded island actually has a record player, or at least a boombox with some batteries in it, because it'd be odd to bring an album and then not have a way to play it. That would be kind of torture. This one is from Timothy Crawford. Hello, Timothy. It's good to talk to you. If you are on a boat with Lisa, Paula Abdul, and Expose, and they fall overboard, whom would you save first? You guys. Well, I'm not an asshole. I would save all of them. I don't want them to die. I just rather not listen to their songs. If I had to pick one, I would probably pick the one that couldn't swim themselves, and Paula looks like she can swim because she's such a good dancer. So I don't know, maybe I'll pick Lisa first. I'll get her out, and then the two of us can help put the other ones back on the boat. And then I would just, as a payment to thank you, just don't thank me. Just don't sing for me. I love the question and the creativity. This next question is from Dan Ruskin. Hello, Dan. Good to talk to you. What are the dividing lines between the different eras of point calculations, and are the songs on the fringes affected one way or another? This is an excellent question. We actually talked about it a little bit offline. There are several demarcation lines in the rock era where the point values kind of switch. I've mentioned it before in previous podcasts and in the other playlist, but to give sort of the generalization, not every year, not every song is created equal on the Billboard charts. They have to weigh them. If we only took just the static, 1 point for a song that was number 100, 2 points for a song that was 99, and so on and so forth, there would never be a song, maybe more than 3 or 4 of them, pre-1992. Every song in the top 3,000, 4,000 would all be from 1992 and beyond, because the point values changed so much. Songs stayed on the charts for so much longer that it would dwarf the constant churning out of records from the earlier eras, and particularly the mid-60s. In 66 and 67, there were over 340 hits that made the top 40 each, while you go to, say, 1982, another solid year, there were only like 220. And then you get to, in the 2000s era, 2007, there's only 170 of them. There weren't as many hits making the top 40, so the ones that were on the charts stayed up there much, much longer than its earlier era counterparts. And there were definitely changes in music styles that related to that. In the 60s, they wanted everything to come out very, very quickly. People were producing albums at a much faster clip than they would in the 80s, 90s, and beyond. Plus, the way that charts were measured has changed through the years. Before, it was people calling up radio stations, the very select radio stations throughout the country that represented a pop station or a rock station or a country station, and say, hey, give me your top 10. And when they did enough of those, they determined what songs 1 through 100 were going to be for that particular week. Well, in December of 1991, the beginning of the rock calendar 1992, that changed to a computer system. They didn't have to call radio stations. There would be some type of thumbprint on every song that a computer would pick up, said, hey, it's playing Black and White by Michael Jackson based on the first 3 seconds of the song. Therefore, I'm going to chart it. It made it a much more accurate for the most part, but what it also did is it skewed everything to where songs would climb up the charts quicker and stay up there for much, much longer periods of time. So anything between 1991 and 1992 had to go through that. There are examples of songs that in November of 91, they were doing its normal chart trajectory from the old style. As soon as the first week of December's chart rollout occurred, songs that had fallen off the charts or were rapidly falling down the charts zoomed right back into the top 10, and then it stayed there forever. I was mentioning Michael Jackson's Black and White. That was the first long, lengthy number 1 hit after the switchover. It was number 1 for 7 weeks, which was the same amount of weeks it was his other big hit, Billie Jean, was in 1983. But because the way that we measured it in overall points for this countdown, 83 mattered much more than 1992. So the song Billie Jean is rated much, much, much higher than Black and White, both by the same artist, both within just a few years of each other. The 90s were also goofy in the fact that several songs were not released as singles, as per the rule that was going on since before the rock era. A song had to actually be released as a single for it to chart, according to Billboard. Well, there was a tug of war between the record companies and the Billboard charts, where the record companies wouldn't release a song as a single because they wanted people to buy the entire CD. It was $17, $21, and they did not want to create all the overhead in making a CD that's, $5 for the one or two songs just to have it released. And so a lot of record companies wouldn't release them. And so songs that got a lot of radio airplay, which is another component in measuring chart performance, had no release of singles from point of sale, which essentially knocked it out of the charts. There are two big examples that I always point to in the 90s, and that's Don't Speak by No Doubt and Iris by the Goo Goo Dolls. Iris by the Goo Goo Dolls, I think, would have been number one for like 15 weeks had it actually been released as a single. Well, in December of 1998, that changed again, where they started allowing airplay-only songs to actually make the Billboard chart. They kind of came to some type of compromise. And so songs that wouldn't get released could still chart high and as high as even number one. But there's another change when it hit December of 98. Now airplay-only songs could chart. I mentioned Iris. That first week it could actually chart. It, quote-unquote, debuted at number 9. Now, it didn't stay on very long because it was already on the downslide of its chart run, but several other hits, including Thank You by Alanis Morissette, I'm Your Angel, Celine Dion and R. Kelly, debuted at number 1 that week. Have You Ever by Brandy, From This Moment On by Shania Twain, Save Tonight by Eagle Eye Cherry, Lullaby by Sean Mullins. All of those debuted where they were originally airplay only, and now they were free to chart like all of the other songs. They didn't get as many points as they could have in a full chart run, but that was a huge change. Another demarcation line comes with the change in Christmas music format, and I think it was 2018, where it will allow re-entries of songs for the Christmas holiday season, or it didn't have as much weight on it any time before. Now, there were several times where Christmas songs had charted and even hit number 1. Look back to the Christmas song by the Alvin and the Chipmunks back in 1958 hit number 1. And before the rock era started, one of the biggest selling songs of all time being Crosby's White Christmas. Well, they would occasionally chart, but maybe for a week here, week there. But in 2018, it started showing up more frequently, to the point now where the month of December is completely taken over by Christmas music. That wasn't there before 2018. And so songs like All I Want for Christmas Is You is eventually going to be the number 1 song of all time, because it has a 4-week set in December where it's just vaulted to the number 1 song, and other Christmas songs follow suit. Heck, we had the Brenda Lee Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree song, which was released in 1961, never hit number 1 until last year, or I should say 2024, making it the longest time span between when a song was first released and when it hit number 1. And it's because of the Christmas songs. Well, what that does is that knocks all the other songs out for a month. So there's a demarcation line there as well. Excellent question, and it goes to the whole idea of weighting a song based on era. And what I'd like to say is a song being number 1 for 16 weeks has such different meaning between the eras. How I like to define it, if you want to go back into the historian and have everything mesh together as far as what's considered the best songs of all time versus the 10th best song versus the 100th best song, think of it how it dominates the chart measurement and the chart era of its time. If it's dominating more than anything else of its time, then that one should get the highest ranking, even if it's less weeks than something that comes out, 25 years later. In 1968, the song Hey Jude came out, which hit number 1 for 9 weeks. Well, that has a lot of weight to it because no songs in the 60s hit number 1 for 9 weeks after 1961. That was a big deal. Nowadays, if a song hits number 1 for 9 weeks, it's good, but it's not as big a deal. It still doesn't dominate the way other songs would in its same era. Therefore, it stands to reason. Hey Jude is one of the greatest songs, Billboard pop chart-wise, of the rock era, and it'll be in one of the last podcast episodes. A very, very long-winded answer, but I like the question. And if I'm missing elements of your question in understanding it to give you the correct answer, come back to me and we can talk about it a little bit more. But I hope I answered it right. From my good friend Rob Reynalda, why do fools fall in love? Because they're fools. Who wrote the Book of Love? I think it's a guy named Sam, and I heard it was a very good book. And of course, What's New Pussycat? Don't even go in there with that shit. Thank you very much. It's my least favorite song of all time, What's New Pussycat by Tom Jones. My God. And it's still the least favorite. A year later, I've been doing these podcasts, and I still haven't come across a song that I hate more than What's New Pussycat by Tom Jones. Thank you, Rob. It's good to talk to you. Hope you and the fam are doing well. Mark Hutchinson, if they made a movie about your life, who would play Christopher Williams? Steve Carell. I think he probably looks the most like me, has the same goofy persona, and has a penchant for picking dramas, even though he's probably better at comedies. And he's just an all-around cool guy. I would hope he would want to play my character. I was told as a younger, maybe a young Noah Wiley back when he was in the ER days, because he has a long face and I have a long face. But I think it's more Steve Carell as I get older. Thanks, Mark. Good question. I wonder who's going to play everybody's life when they make a movie about them, but I think Steve Carell would play mine. Robert Brittenham, one of my most faithful listeners and contributors, he asked me several questions. Have you ever kept saved any of the favorites and top 40 lists you created for yourself and classmates over all the years? And how often do you update your top 200 list? I'd be happy to talk about myself. Thank you. I don't have any of the old ones where I wrote down the top 40s from the old Casey Kasem days. I first started listening in 1982, for those who don't know, and wrote them down religiously, but I did not put it in some type of binder. I was not that organized or sophisticated when it came to writing them down. I kind of wish that I did. When I was 15 years old and sitting in home economics class in Batavia High School in Batavia, Illinois, in the spring of 1988, I got really, really bored and decided to create my top 100 songs of all time. I still listen to the AT40 all the time, but not a lot of the songs were my favorite. I still had nostalgia for the early 80s hits, and I decided to make my top 100 songs. I have since taken that chart from my home economics class and redone it 35 times over the past 38 years. And it's ranged from 100 to 200. I even did a top 1,000 once, although that was a little too ambitious. I still have that original sheet of paper that lists that top 100, although it'll probably disintegrate if I open it now from my file cabinet. I have every single one of those top 100 sheets. I did them mostly in college. I updated it a lot in college because it was fun. It was something to do. But I haven't updated it much since, probably about 2 or 3 times in the past 6-7 years. My first number one song of all time was Glory of Love by Peter Cetera. And I don't particularly care for that song right now. It's interesting. My tastes have changed through the years. But to answer that particular question, I don't have those old American Top 40 charts that I used to write down, but I do have my old Top 100, favorite 200, favorite 1,000 songs going back through the years. Second question, is there anyone else in your family, wife, kids, siblings, a chart lover too? All of them tolerate it, at least. Some of them like it. A couple of them love it. In particular, my younger sister, Elizabeth Armstrong, who is in the Facebook group, who makes frequent contributions. In particular, when she was coming up with her favorite list of 10 songs from the first top 1,000, she put some real thought into it and, dwindled it down to 40 and then 20 and then finally her favorite 10. She's not as a fanatic as I am, but she really, really enjoys the podcast and really, really enjoys charts as a whole. And as a kid, she used to be into the American Top 40 charts as well. Again, not as much as me, but she did really enjoy them. My brother and sister both enjoy them, but I think they enjoy them because I enjoy them, as does my wife and my kids. They all tolerate it. My poor son, anytime I take him around, I always have American Top 40 on the radio, and he puts up with it. So nobody has the same love and passion that I do, but all of them like it to various degrees and tolerate it because I get so excited about it. Question number 3, what is the breakdown of total number of male, female, and groups duos that make up the top 3,000? I don't have that number for you. My apologies. The chart that I use, the database that I've got, does not have it tagged as to whether it's a male or female or duo or group. I would have to look at each one, mark it, and be able to sort it. I'm sure there are other charts out there or other folks that would have a better indication as to how many of each. So sorry about that. Question 4, when you were listening to AT40 with Casey Kasem, did you ever write him a letter with a question or dedication? I did not. I was a little young when I first got into him, and I was really shy about it and thinking that he would never respond back to me. And I always thought that the people that wrote in were so old because they had old people problems like braces and boyfriends and going to college. That was so old for me. It's so weird listening to them now and how young they seem and how creepy they seem too. About unrequited love and following a girl around for 3 straight years. Yeah, that actually falls into the creepy list in the 2020s. But no, I did not write anything to Casey Kasem. I kind of wish I did. Thank you, Robert, for your questions. D. Glencairn, my friend from New Zealand. Hello, D. What would you have done with your time if you chose not to take on this mammoth task? I'm a big theater person. I've done a lot of acting over the last 35 years, and I would probably continue to do plays. I'm also a big sports fan. I'm always watching sports. I'm always writing lists on spreadsheets about sports or about music or about whatnot. I would probably continue to do those. The one thing that I haven't done as much since I started this podcast is theater. I've only done 1 play a year. I used to crank out 3 plays a year, and that's really slowed down in part because of this project, which is completely and totally worth it, as I could have used a break from doing so much theater. But I'm quite happy to have taken on this project and actually quite surprised that I still have the same enthusiasm about it as when I first started. I'm really itching to get to the next podcast, and I'll be starting that very, very soon. Thank you for the question. From Tom Walker, one of my good friends from the theater, speaking of theater, what happened to cause Casey to leave and start his own Top 40 countdown? And what were the differences in how they were both calculated, and actually how different were their results? I deferred this question to Jeffrey Mosher, one of the fellows who helped me launch this podcast and has a wealth of information from the radio music industry. I deferred it to him, and he responded as such. So thank you, Jeffrey, for responding. The reason for departure: Casey Kasem's run on American Top 40 ABC Watermark ended in August 1988 after contract talks fell apart. He was in the final year of a 7-year deal, and the two sides couldn't agree on new terms. Corporate leadership was becoming more corporate and less family for Casey's tastes. Around that time, Westwood One stepped in with a big offer, reportedly triple his salary, signing Casey to a 5-year, $15 million contract. Love to have that gig. His final original AT40 episode aired on August 6th, 1988. And I remember that episode. And I remember him going away and having Shadoe Stevens replace it and not realizing that he was just gone, that he was not coming back. That was a big kind of jolt to the system because that's who you grew up listening to. For the second question, the differences in the charts: 1970 to 1988 Billboard magazine, 1989 to 1994 used radio and records, which gradually sourced research by Media-Based 24/7. When Casey Kasem revived American Top 40 in March of 1998, he used the radio and records CHR Pop Top 50 airplay chart. So it's kind of like a rival to Billboard magazine. This was a departure from the 1970 to 88, which relied on Billboard Hot 100. The show continued to use R&R airplay-based chart until early 2004. I've seen some of the other charts like Cashbox that have been used throughout the years, some of the rivals to Billboard, and there are some differences. Not everything is exactly the same. There's kind of generally the same. Betty Davis Eyes did hit number 1 still, but not for as many weeks as it did Billboard as it did to other charts. So there is some differences between the two. He also answered the question about starting his next show. Casey's new countdown, Casey's Top 40, premiered on January 21st, 1989, about 5.5 months after he left American Top 40. Even though he signed Westwood One back in April of '88, he had to wait until the end of the year before launching anything new because his old contract with ABC Watermark was still in effect. Almost a decade later, he returned to host a revived American Top 40 in March of '98 and regained the rights to the show's name. And that's good because the name belongs to Casey Kasem. I understand Shadoe Stevens did a very good job with it in the few years that he had it, but American Top 40 is synonymous with Casey Kasem, at least in my opinion. Jeffrey, thank you for the response. And Tom, great question. Thank you for asking. Jeffrey Mosher has his own question, by the way. He said, from the first season, had the longest span between the first hit and the last hit among that top 1,000? That's a great question, and I actually did some research on that. So let me give you the top 5. In 5th place, 818 songs apart, for Roy Orbison's Mean Woman Blues at song 2981 and Running Scared at song 2163. In 4th place is Kenny Loggins' I'm All Right at song 2953 and Whenever I Call You Friend at 2117, a span of 836 songs. In 3rd place is Jay-Z, song 2921, Dirt Off Your Shoulder, and 2070, the 03 Bonnie and Clyde, a span of 851 songs. In 2nd place, Creedence Clearwater Revival at 875 songs between song 2970, Travelin' Band Who'll Stop the Rain, and song 2095, Looking Out My Back Door and Long As I Can See the Light. And the number 1, the longest span between songs in the first season, first 1,000 songs, belongs to LL Cool J. 882 positions between Love You Better at song 2954 and Loungin' at song 2072. That was a fun thing to research. Thank you very much, Jeffrey, for the question. Next question comes from Fred Hawson, my friend from the Philippines. Hello, Fred. It's good to talk to you. And he gives a regional question. How has your audience in the Asian region increased in your first year? Do you have a current list of your top 5 Asian cities based on downloads? Excellent question. Buzzsprout account, the one that I subscribe to, does locations by country and by city. It doesn't go any more granular than that. It doesn't check anybody's house as far as which person's house is doing it. So I can't tell if a city that has 2 or 3 download hits if it's coming from the same person or the same household. But it does do a spread out of locations by country. Right now I have 78 countries that have downloaded at least one episode. Now some of them it's just one episode. They've just did it once. They probably hit on it incorrectly, listened to it for about 60 seconds and said, yeah, enough with that. But it does do a continental breakdown. In the Asian continent, let me give some context first. North America, 8,441 downloads as of this recording, by far and away the most. Europe has 477, Oceania, which includes Australia, hello everyone, 426, Asia 293, South America 105, Africa 21. Those are the total number of downloads per continent. Nothing from Antarctica yet, although I'm still hopeful. From an Asian perspective, the country that has the most downloads, and mostly thanks to you, Fred, is the Philippines with 86. Singapore is second with 82, and Japan is right behind it with 65. Rounding that out, India has 32, and then Taiwan has 5. So really it's just those 4 particular countries in Asia that have the most. From a city perspective, and I know I've mentioned cities a lot, but it usually just revolves around American cities and Australian cities because they have the most. But I can say Quezon City in Metro Manila has 44 downloads. Kuryu-gunma in Japan has 49. And Caloocan City, I think I pronounced that right, in Manila as well has 25. Overall, Manila has 75 downloads. And that could all be you, Fred. Could be you, Fred, and one of your friends or somebody else, possibly. So I have you to thank for that. Thank you very much. But those would be the most in the Asian regions: Philippines, Singapore, and Japan, with India kind of a distant fourth. Thanks for the question. If anyone wants to know about their specific region, reach out to me. either in a DM through the Facebook group or however you want to communicate with me. I'll be happy to give you a rundown of number of downloads from your particular location. I always love seeing it. I'm fascinated with the fact that anybody wants to listen to me at all, let alone people from other parts of the world. Next question comes from Hans Anderson. Hello, Hans. Will you ever release a spreadsheet of songs 3001 and beyond? The curiosity is killing me of those left off the top 3,000. I did create one. I'm not going to post it to the Facebook, but if anybody wants to get a copy of it, reach out to me in the Facebook group or through a direct message, and I will email it to you. I don't want to have it posted to the Facebook group because that kind of ruins the surprise of the stuff that's on it. I want people to be surprised and not be tempted to look at it and lose the surprise when they're actually listening to the actual podcasts. But yes, it is available upon request. From Tim Little, my Seattle friend, and congratulations on your Seahawks winning the Super Bowl. He has a couple of questions. What was the first rock pop concert I ever went to? And what's the best rock concert that I've ever attended? My first one was Daryl Hall and John Oates, of course, right? February of 1983, the H2O tour from the UIC, University of Illinois at Chicago Pavilion in Chicago, Illinois. I went with my dad. My mom and dad had divorced, and I remember my mom sending me over to my dad's house with the strict instructions that I had to go to church the next day, and I conveniently forgot about that. All I do know is about the concert. It was wonderful. It was Daryl Hall and John Oates, and it was the first time I've ever been in a concert before. It was fantastic. I've been to see him 2 more times. I'm not a huge concert goer, oddly enough. Most of my viewing discretionary income goes into sporting events, but I do like going to some concerts. I loved Billy Joel. That would probably be my favorite. Daryl Hall, John Oates, Billy Joel. And I also really love ZZ Top when I went to see them too. I think they're just rock gods in particular. So those 3 would probably be my favorites. His next question, in season 1, which song or songs personally surprised you with how high they are on the countdown? And which songs most surprise you with how low they ended up? The biggest surprise overall is not the songs that were in the first 1,000, but the songs that weren't, and particularly the 80s number 1 hits. There have been number 1 hits that we've already displayed and reviewed from every decade except the 80s. I'm amazed with the sheer volume of number 1 hits from the 80s, and none of them have been mentioned and won't be mentioned for another 300 songs. That surprises me the most. That concentration of 80s tunes that were ranked very, very high if they hit number 1. And you have to have a long tail in the 2000s, meaning hit number 1 and stay on the charts to be recognized at all. Harlem Shake hit number 1 for 5 weeks, yet that was still in the first season. That surprised me a lot. Even though it only spent 14 weeks in the top 40, it was very much a novelty hit, Harlem Shake. But man, 5 weeks number 1 should mean more than it ended up being. That was probably my biggest surprise for how low it was. Where I was surprised at the beginning of this podcast series, I'm less surprised now because I'm starting to see how the point value is actually working. I know the demarcation lines. I know the hits that went up to number 2 or number 3 are going to finish about here, where the ones from the 90s that have lower peak positions but stayed on forever because it was the frickin' 90s and it was all weird are going to have higher positions. I have mentioned a couple of times about the highest ranked song in Billboard history that peaked at number 10 or number 9 or number 8. We're going to get to the 9 and the 8 very, very soon. But the hint that I gave was several of them are all from the 90s, including the number 10 hit, the one song by Tesla, and the number 9 hit, which we are going to get to in about 2 or 3 podcasts. That's also from the 90s. I hope that answers your question. Thank you for asking. Timothy Crawford also asked me, if life gives you lemons, what would you make? Well, I'd probably make a salad because I'm really into lemons and limes as my salad dressing. I know that's odd, but I am not into like ranch dressing or creamy anything. I hate it. I haven't had a regular glass of white milk since I was 11. But what I do love is citrus. So if you hand me a lemon, I'll probably squeeze it all over a chicken salad. There's my thing. But yes, if life gives me bad stuff, I'll go one of two directions. I'll get ragey depressed for a little while, and then I will be optimistic happy, because I think that's my default, is optimistic happy, which is why I like creating this countdown. It's always something to look forward to. This has actually been very therapeutic, this particular podcast, because it's getting us through a lot of weird times. It is not a coincidence that I started this podcast in November and December of 2024. And that's all I'll say about that. Just a couple of more questions. This one was asked by several folks that have posted a lot to the Facebook group, and they sort of ask me personally, is it too much? What is too much to put to the Facebook group? I don't mind. If it starts to overwhelm the actual podcast uploads and any of the stuff that I wanted to convey to the listeners, I'll let you know. But by all means, post away. This is a community group. If you are posting this great song 25 times a day, maybe that can be a little bit much. I want everybody to have equal access to posting stuff between the list of number one songs through the years that Jim Robertson does, or D. Roberts' blog about the pop charts, or Timothy Crawford's trivia questions based on song lyrics, any of that stuff. I love it. And I'm so glad that you guys are comfortable enough to contribute. And I'm glad that everybody else is contributing with responses to your own posts. So have at it. And don't worry about it. I will let you know if I feel that it's starting to overwhelm the board. And the last question from Robert Brittenham is a personal one. What was it that triggered your interest in acting? What was your very first role? What has been your favorite part to portray? Man, I can do an entire podcast series about my acting adventures. I absolutely love theater. I love being on stage. As you can tell, I am quite the ham. But I never set foot on stage until I was 20 years old. I was a sports person in high school, did stuff like that, but it was always too chicken shit to actually be up on stage. I had took a class in creative writing that I liked in college and wanted to take the second course. But due to me not paying my phone bill on time, budget was a little tight back then when I was in school. It dropped me out of all of my classes. And so I had to come up with a whole new set of them during the summer. And by the time I signed up for creative writing, the class was full. So I'm looking for other electives. I was a business major and I wanted to have something fun. And like fourth on the list was acting for TV and film. And I'm like, you know what the heck? And it wasn't full up. I'll take the class, and if I'm too nervous about it, I'll just quit after a week. And I even questioned myself after the first couple of classes to the instructor. I'm like, I feel like I'm completely a fish out of water. I don't know what I'm doing. And she said to kind of stick with it. And I did. And it became my home. I fell in love with acting that semester, took an acting for TV and film 2 the following semester, and then went out for my first play in the winter of 1993, A Christmas Carol, adapted by my favorite instructor, Dr. Jerry Eisenhower, who got me to fall in love with being on stage. Playing Fred, who also narrated it in the adaptation, was one of my favorite roles of all time, one that I will never forget. And I have never stopped acting since. I've done like 54 plays since then, in all different types of roles and genres and musicals and stuff like that. My favorite was playing John Merrick in The Elephant Man. I did that, my God, now 9 years ago, directed by Sean Ogren, the wonderful Sean Ogren, who is also a listener to this podcast. Hey, Sean. It's still my favorite show of all time, but A Christmas Carol, definitely. The 39 Steps with my best friend Ken Caden and Michael Fudala. I've done that twice. Moonlight and Magnolias. There's so many that I love. And if you are into theater and acting, I'll be happy to do a side podcast at a later date talking about my adventures, as us actors always love talking shop. Thank you so much for the questions, Robert. It gets me giddy to talk about theater almost as much as it does about top 40 music. Well, that's everything that I've got. Thank you so much for the questions. I will have a Mailbag 3 out at some point if you're still looking to know about more things about the podcast, about myself, about the music industry. But I am now ready to start moving with episode 51, season 2, episode 1. The songs are going to be better, a lot better. Whereas the songs in the 3,000 to 2,000 range, I knew a lot of them, but some of them were new to me. You know, almost all of them in the 2000s, or very close to all of them, especially in the wheelhouse range of the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s. Most of these were number 1 hits and number 2 hits. You're going to recognize them more, and it'll be more exciting as we start picking them off. So that will come up next week. Thank you to everyone for the questions. Thank you to everyone for listening. And thank you for everyone for being patient while I do this interlude in between seasons 1 and 2. And to my great friend, Kaylee Sibrel, thank you. You are wonderful. And now off to season 2. It is one of the great pleasures in life to connect with people, both through voice or through song. I hope I've done both. And so on, and so on, and Scooby-Dooby-Doo. Good day.